Hi everyone, it's been quite some time since I have, put out a review, so I decided since it's been so long, I'm going to make a album review bigger video than normal. I'm going to review Logic's latest album, DeMarco, Tim Hecker, as well as Injury Reserve, and Megan Thee Stallion. So that's 5 different albums that I didn't get the chance to review last week, or at all, so we're going to talk about them. I apologize for my absence. I had a couple projects due, so I had to spend time doing them. Senior year of high school really is a stretch, but in the end, I'm going to be happy and free from the monotony of school. Let's get to the album reviews. We're going to start off this review with Logic's Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. Oh god, this is terrible. This is terrible. This is a terrible album. Here's the thing. Many people say Logic's worst album was Supermarkets, and even when this album was released, they still stand by that idea. However, I'm the one to say that this is by far his worst project yet. I see Supermarket as somewhat endearing, somewhat naive, but Logic, he knows how to rap, at the least. He knows how to use production to his favor. He knows how to do this. This album sounds so rough and so cluttered with ideas. It is bad. It is terrible. It is certainly his worst project to date. Let's talk about some of the quotes that I found within the first half of this album. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Switch up the plan like homie that went from Verizon to Sprint. I'd suck a dick just to prove I ain't that way. This is one that I found kind of infuriating. I'm feeling like Kid Cudi, a little crazy, but tell me, what genius ain't a little nutty? And then later on in the song, I ain't bipolar, Kanye making me wish I was. Cause that level of genius, the meanest. There are a couple more, especially the Michael Jackson one, which says, Michael Jackson on these hoes, you know I keep the glove. And the fucking ad-lib is, hee hee. Oh god. And more of the hooks on Wannabe, Clickbait, Out of Sight, Commando, Icy. It's definitely Icy. Still Ballin', Cocaine, Don't Be Afraid, Lost in Translation are repetitive. And let's talk about Icy for a minute. What is the hook on Icy? Who wrote this hook? Jesus Christ. It's like, I'm icy, I'm clean. I'm fucking cringing. I swear to God, this is terrible. This is terrible. Really, there are only a couple decent things I could say about this album, and that one of them would be somehow Will Smith managed to come out of, the woodworks and put a feature, have a feature on this album, and it's not half bad. But the production on this song, it's directly pulled out of the 90s, or even the 80s. It is so dated. The sound is so dated. YBN Corday, if I'm remembering that right, has a pretty good feature, a really good feature. Probably one of the best on the album. The song Homicide is trash. Don't even convince me that it isn't. Everything else about this album is just really, really bare bones, super annoying, done before. We've heard this stuff already. Recycled. This was pulled directly out of the recycle bin. It's a bad album. It's a really bad album. I think it's his worst album by far. Because Supermarket, like I said, naivety. And maybe ignorance as well, but mainly naive is what Logic was while making Supermarket. Logic went into Confessions of a Dangerous Mind knowing how to rap, knowing what he wanted, and this is the sound that came out of it. F+. And that's that. Moving on to Megan Thee Stallion with her debut album Fever. She released a mixtape, I believe, in 2017, if I'm correct. 2017 or 2018. But The mixtape was quite better than this album because really what this album is the mixtape part 2. Now I can't remember the mixtape off the top of my head, but it's certainly somewhat better than this at higher, importance. While the debut album is important, it's certainly filled with club bangers, and that's it. This album is nothing but bangers, but for me, I'm not feeling it. It's not really in my taste. It's not something I would listen to. It's something that you would play at a club, and specifically at a club, or maybe in your car, hanging out with your friends, wanting to listen to some music that you guys can just dance to. This is that music. This is that music. The problem that I have with it is that it's very similar to what other artists have been doing, which is pretty generic trap instrumentation and kind of these really repetitive hooks that repeat throughout the track so you can twerk to. That's really all I get from this album. I don't get any satisfaction or gratification from this album, which it's probably because I listen to it sitting down at my house and not in a club. So this really is more of a niche album, really for a club setting. So not in my best interests, not terrible, but certainly not in my taste. C+. Mac DeMarco is an artist that I was recently introduced to, and I was kind of upset with his album, Here Comes the Cowboy. Apparently there's some controversy behind it, where it was with Mitski and Here's the Cowboy, and the single off of both albums were Nobody. Wow, coincidence. Okay, but going into this album, I wasn't really expecting much, but I came out a little disappointed, especially since his previous efforts had been pretty well done. But this album was just something different. This album was just very minimalistic, very bare bones, very quiet too. And some of the lyricism on this thing is not really the greatest. And I think it's partially because he didn't have a record label behind this album. It was independent. Yeah, I know he wants to go in a more creative direction, but this isn't the creative direction that I was hoping for, at least. And diving back into his previous works, there are definitely way more thought put into these songs. But Here Comes the Cowboy is definitely not an album that I would recommend to people that want to go into Mac DeMarco's music, because this certainly isn't the sound that he's known for. Lyricism is not up to par on this album, but it's certainly not a terrible record. It is his worst. It is his worst, but it's certainly not terrible. I'm really middle of the road with it. I'm not loving it, but I'm not hating it. So I'll give it a C. Tim Hecker is an electronic ambient drone music producer that has put out some of the most interesting music this past century. Whoa, that's generous. This past decade, at least. His last album, Canoyo, if I'm saying that right, was critically acclaimed. And I went into this album hoping for the best, and I certainly got what I wanted. I certainly got what I liked. 6 tracks, pretty tight, about 30 minutes-ish, and I wasn't really disappointed with any of the songs other than a couple of the choices made within a song is rather what I was disappointed in. I loved the first 3 tracks, but after the fourth track and beyond, it kind of got a little shaky from there. It kind of redeemed himself in the last track, but in the end, it was definitely a good album. I enjoyed it, but it's certainly something that can be improved on. So listen to it, form your own opinion, but I'm giving this album a B. Injury Reserve, self-titled debut album. Oh my goodness, we've been waiting for this since their mixtape dropped. Yeah, we've been waiting for this. And I went into this album quite excited. And I came out of it excited, but a little... There's an itch. There's an itch that wanted to be itched, but it wasn't. I would say the one problem about this album is the flow. Each song sounds a little bit different from the rest. There's one song that I can point out specifically that I'm not the biggest fan of, and that's Gravy and Biscuits. I think while it is like upbeat, up-tempo, and all that, it certainly doesn't mix with everything else in the album. I love Jailbreak the Tesla. I love What a Year It's Been. I love many of the tracks on the album, and the highlights are certainly high, but the lowlights are quite low too. But again, it was a really nice album that I really enjoyed for many reasons. One of them being how experimental and how creative this album is. Certainly something that can be improved upon in the next album, but hell, it was done really well in this album. But yeah, my only gripe really is that the flow on it is not that good. The flow within tracks and songs and all that, it doesn't really work all that much. But certainly it is an enjoyable album that I recommend people who don't even know who Injury Reserve is listen to. One thing that is fucking amazing about this album is the bass. Holy shit. Damn. That's all I have to say. B+ on this album. Alright. that was a ride. That was a trip. 14 minutes later, and we are at the end of this video. I know it wasn't the longest. I apologize. I know, I really do wish that I don't have to take so many breaks. But hey, I'm graduating soon, so maybe that's gonna be the case. Hopefully, I cross my fingers. But anyway, thank you for watching. There will be definitely new albums soon. Or not from me. New album reviews coming soon. Yeah, wait for them. Definitely gonna review Igor and a couple others. Flying Lotus is definitely one of them. I definitely want to review Flying Lotus and others again. So thanks for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.